Hey everyone, geophysicist Stefan Burns here. Boom shakalaka, solar flares are back. We have just had a 2.5 M-class flare. This is the strongest solar flare that we've had since June 19th. It has been some time. In fact, this is the first M-class flare that we've had since June 20th. So we've been in a solar flare low. There's been plenty of other space weather activity and of course many other energetic events have unfolded on this planet and across the solar system over the past couple weeks. But as it relates to these explosions on the sun and that burst of photon light energy that hits Earth in 8.3 minutes, it has been a minute. This is on the eastern limb, a little bit off of that exact 90-degree angle from Earth center direct. So in fact, it looks like this sunspot group here is going to take about 8 days to reach Earth center and direct. And there are plenty other sunspot groups on the far side following up behind this active region. So it looks like solar flares are back on the menu. It's going to be interesting to see what peak they reach in terms of their intensity. It's possible that this is it. I don't think that's going to be the case. We're going to dive into that and much more in today's video. Here we have our D region absorption model, and this is modeling the D region of the ionosphere, the lowest part of the ionosphere, around 50 kilometers up, that only appears during daytime because it is ionized and created by the light and energy of the sun. And so this right here is our D region, and then you see this is the nighttime side of the Earth, and therefore there is no D region. Well, when you get a strong solar flare, that extra increase in burst of energy from the sun, specifically that ultraviolet, extreme ultraviolet, X-ray radiation, that creates greater ionization and causes the D region to become more plasmified, you could say. And therefore, this affects radio communication. So this is a useful model for anyone that operates radio frequency communication equipment. Here we see this burst come in, reaching a peak around 4:15 a.m. Universal Time today, July 8th, and centered directly over Asia, specifically East Asia. So Japan, Eastern China, Taiwan, the Philippines, where we've been having a lot of seismic activity. So I do find that interesting, though this is just a one-off flare at this moment in time. And typically, before I make any strong judgments or assumptions as to the trend of something, I like to see something happen 3 times. So we do get this first burst of photonic energy from the sun at these higher vibrational wavelengths since June 20th, right over this area that is seismically active. Of course, it's always seismically active. It is the Ring of Fire, but there is this ongoing earthquake swarm, which some people are saying is indicative of some sort of volcanic event that's already underway in the Ryukyu Trench. And if we check in on our earthquake swarm south of Japan, there haven't been any updates posted to the USGS latest earthquakes map as it relates to the swarm for the past day. But if we go directly to the meteorological agency from Japan, then we see that there are still a lot of earthquakes popping off right here in the Ryukyu Trench. So we see all these ones that say adjacent Sea of Tokara Islands. That is that earthquake swarm. These are all magnitude 2s and 3s. Some 4s. Here's one right there, 4.5. That was yesterday. But in general, there's been a lot of activity here. It has slowed down a little bit, but there are still dozens that have occurred already today on the 8th of July. And soon it's going to be the 9th of July for the Japanese. So this swarm has cooled off a little bit in terms of like the magnitude 5 earthquakes and the sheer number of them, but it is still very much alive and active. And we see this sort of activity with swarms often. There's kind of like this pulsing rhythm to it. So it'll be really interesting to see when that does eventually die down and how it decides to do that. Will it just go out and kind of simmer down, or will it go out with a bang and there's something really big that happens? We'll just have to wait and see. Here we have our combined view of the sun for today, July 8th, and we'll see this solar flare pop off right here, but you'll notice there's actually a 2-part event. You get this really fast plasma filament launch, or just in general, this kind of like loop of plasma that blasts off. See that right there? And then you see these coronal loops that follow after an explosion just a little bit further behind that zone. So it looks like this plasma launch that occurred just nearby triggered some instabilities in that active region, causing it to have that 2.5 M-class flare. So a quick back-to-back, this is so close together, you can consider this all one event, but it is cool to see that 1-2 effect with this combined view. You'll also notice a very nice large plasma filament right there, soon to be in the Earth center strike zone, and it's closer to the equator. We've been having a lot of plasma filaments blast off to the north of the ecliptic plane, and therefore very unlikely to interact with the Earth in any way in the near future, like the next few days. This guy, if it launched, perhaps could send something our way, though I would be looking more towards like plasma filaments right in this zone for that to be a surefire thing. And we do have some other plasma filaments across the sun. We have a lot of plasma filaments on the sun right now. Here we have our 211 angstrom view of the sun. You'll notice that this large coronal hole that we have been tracking on the sun now for months is making another appearance. It is looking similar in size for what we see thus far as the last few rotations, but there is one big notable change, and that is this trans-equatorial portion to it right there, slicing right through that solar equator and fairly close to the whole beginning of this coronal hole. So we're not likely to probably have any sort of high-speed stream enhancement really hit us from this section. It's a little too far south of the equator, and that hasn't really done much the past couple times. I mean, maybe a little bit, but not much. But this section right there is where I think things are going to get a little bit more dynamic. So we can expect G1 to G2 storming from that part of the high-speed stream sweeping by the Earth. This is a positive polarity coronal hole, but we've had G2 storms from this coronal hole a couple times now at least. And this is, I can't keep track of which rotation this is. I think this is rotation number 12. It's been on the sun since October. So it's been a very long-lived feature on the sun, coming back for another swing, and we'll just have to wait and see if this coronal hole there stays the same, or whether it actually widens and strengthens as it appears to be doing, or maybe it diminishes and closes up before it gets to that geoeffective position. So we have this new flare, we have potentially more flares on the way, I think that's likely, and then we do have this high-speed stream impact coming in probably in about 8 days or so, 8 or 9 days. It needs to get all the way to the geoeffective position. We have these other plasma filaments, so they could launch off at any time. So there's a lot of potential and possibility, but at this moment in time, things are calm geomagnetically. We're not in any sort of strong solar wind. That has cooled off. That 2.5 M class fire gave us a little burst of light photons, but it didn't really send a coronal mass ejection our way. So enjoy the calm and respite while you can. There's plenty of events happening here on Earth energetically, but as it relates to the sun and space weather, we are a little bit just in a calm, quiet period with hints that there's more soon to come on the way. Here we have 3 different data sets which allow us to track what's happening with the sun energetically from a more qualitative viewpoint than just, for example, hey, we had a solar flare. So up top, we have our 10.7 centimeter radial flux. And this is going back to May 28th over here on the right side, then going to July 7th here. And so it's a little flipped, but notice that we've had these waves of descending strength up till the present moment in time. And the high value there is 170. This is solar flux units, whereas we used to have 220, 240 for that SFU value. So we are quite low now at about 117 or so, whereas even just back in June and May, we had values that got close to 200, didn't exactly get there though. And this is a measure of that radio frequency emission from the sun. You can measure that across a variety of wavelengths. Here we're looking at the 10.7 centimeter wavelength. That is a 2800 megahertz frequency or 2.8 gigahertz. So you can look at the frequencies around it, but this is one of the strongest frequencies emitted by the sun, and it's received here at the surface quite easily. It's able to pass through that ionosphere. So when you have this going down, that's indicating that the solar cycle is starting to come to a close. Of course, this takes a very long time. Solar minimum won't be here until probably 2030 or so, right? That's a ways off. We have a descending phase certainly ahead of us. The question is, are we going to have any sort of rebound in solar activity to really make it solar maximum again? We're probably not going back to 215 sunspots, but we could maybe go back to 160, 170 sunspots for a monthly count and that would be pretty significant and still stronger than any of the values that we had in solar cycle 24 maximum. Here we have our 10.7 centimeter radial flux for solar cycle 25 and 24. So now it's flipped again, okay? So here's 24. This is 2010, 2012, 2014. We see our values there. Got to a high of about 170 or so, which is what we were at here at the end of May, beginning of June. And then we see that effectively it wasn't that strong of a solar cycle. Whereas solar cycle 25 has been much stronger, going up to nearly 250 for August, I believe that is right there, of 2024. That's when we had our sunspot peak at 216, according to NOAA. But look at how it's gone down. And even though sunspots rebounded for the month of June as compared to May, solar flux continued to go down. So this solar cycle is looking really weak at this moment in time, but you'll see where solar minimum is. This is solar minimum. So we're certainly not in solar minimum, but it would look like this is, at this moment in time, a shortened cycle and we're already on the descending phase, unless we get some sort of rebound to kind of create this more rolling hill, you could say, of overall heightened activity before we then start to go down. So it's going to be really interesting to see going into the rest of July, August, September, October, and basically going to the end of the year, what happens as it relates to solar activity. Because things right now, this drop has been very precipitous, one of the biggest drops, at least for sunspot numbers, that we've seen across all the solar cycles for the data that we have. Here we have our past 30 days of sunspots. And again, this is right there, June going to July. So we've gone up to 150 twice now. Right now we're back in this holding value there, just under 100, probably about 80 or 90. It looks like it's 90 right now. So this isn't really all that strong in terms of sunspot numbers, but we have a bunch of sunspots on the far side. Soon to rotate in. Let's check it out. Here we have our latest farside intensitygram for July 8th, 2025, thanks to the Solar Orbiter probe, which is nearly exactly 180 degrees opposite the Earth at this moment in time on the other side of the sun. So at this moment in time, we have really good coverage of sunspots across the entire sun, which is fantastic. So we can see what is soon to rotate into view on the Earth-facing side. We see this group right there, closest to that limb that will soon be in Earth view. And then we see also these sunspots there clustered around the central meridian, exactly opposite the Earth. So it'll take these ones specifically about a week to maybe start appearing on the eastern limb of the Earth-facing side, and then this one will take a little bit longer. But we do have new sunspots slowly working in. Maybe we'll get some new sunspots to form as new flux pushes out of the interior of the sun, because this magnetic field of the sun is still flipping. There is some now polarity that's emerging in the southern hemisphere that is the opposite polarity now. It seems to be fairly stable. That's what Solar Orbiter was able to piece out recently with its SCOOP mission, where it went well below the ecliptic plane so it could image that southern pole of the sun. But this takes time. So there are going to be periods where new solar flux merges out and the magnetic fields are combining and all this stuff until eventually we reach that stable polarity. So we have these guys soon up basically in queue for the next 2 weeks or so. It takes 2 weeks to go from here to the other side. And so I think we have more solar flares on the way, and this 2.5 M-class flare really was just a warm-up. Here we have our Helio viewer, which allows us to see the X-ray flux and therefore the solar flare activity from the sun on the Earth-facing side. And this is a fantastic app. It's linked in the video description. Allows you to go back and forward in time and to see these other trends of solar activity as well. Very easy to use. Well, look at this 2.5 M-class flare, a big spike up, and that was also from slightly beyond the limb. So if it had been more Earth-centered, that would have definitely probably registered as a higher spike. But look how flat our X-ray flux has been going all the way back to the 20th when we had roughly a 1.0 M-class flare. And then this is the 19th with that 1.9 X-class flare. So it's been a minute, only low-grade C-class activity. And so if you are someone that is sensitive to these energetic disruptions and just in general, perhaps space weather, then you shouldn't really have been feeling anything, at least as it relates to solar flares, for about 2 weeks now. So this is a good way to double check whether you're making up these symptoms or whether you actually are electromagnetically sensitive, right? We need to do some ground truthing every once in a while. And some people will just naturally feel this more than others. If you have often some sort of like chronic illness or something like Lyme disease, that often makes you more sensitive to these sort of energy perturbations. But we haven't had anything as it relates to solar flares going back to June 20th and really going back to June 19th with that 1.9 X-class flare. There's been geomagnetic storming, there's been other things. But as it relates to solar flares, basically there hasn't been anything. So just check that out if you are someone that keeps track of this for that reason. So things seem to be turning around now with this 2.5 M-class flare, and I think we're going to start seeing this go up and up and up more as we approach the middle of July, and then probably going into later July, because it's going to take some time for the sunspots exactly on the far side of the sun in that central meridian to be on the earth facing side of the sun, central meridian, 2 weeks. So that takes us all the way to about July 22nd or so. And here we have our solar system, the planets, and the two planetary resonances I want to discuss are the full moon and also this conjunction that we have coming up between Saturn and Neptune in the middle of this month, or at least it's a near conjunction, just like 13 arc minutes apart for a couple days. So we go here to our actual time. We see that the moon is not exactly in that full moon position, which is in opposition with the sun. But if we go forward to the end of the 10th EDT, right around there, we have this full moon, and the moon slips into that exact opposition with the sun. If we go by Western Tropical, this is the full moon in Capricorn, which is the position of fall. It doesn't like to be in Capricorn because its domicile is in Cancer, the opposite sign. So this is the one full moon every year where the moon just doesn't like where it is, basically. And this is also indicating, as every full moon, that the moon is in Earth's magnetotail, which there is quite a bit of research suggesting that some of the main electric circuit dynamics within Earth's magnetosphere that control aurora and geomagnetic storming and substorms, they are found in the magnetotail. And so when you have this massive object moving through Earth's magnetotail with a strong charge differential going from its lit surface to its dark surface, right? Positive buildup on the light surface, negative charge on the dark side, that could potentially, cause some changes to the plasma sheet there, the flux tube, and just in general, any electric circuit dynamics that exist within the magnetotail. And so we don't really have anything that's like coming up necessarily as it relates to a geomagnetic storm or some reason for there to be a disturbance. But there is this disruptor, you could say, the moon going through, just in general, casting more light on the planet, increasing the overall amount of energy. But it seems to be doing it right now at a period of time where things are cool and calm. But though we are having these solar flares come back, at least we've had that 2.5 M-class flare. So it's possible that we start to get a lot more of those, and that's the effect that we have. We have this full moon light energy effect and some energy volatility, perhaps at the magnetotail, connecting to the global electric circuit, and then also maybe we get these solar flares to start popping off like crazy. That's possible. If we go forward just a little bit further to around the 13th and 14th of July, you will notice that Saturn and Neptune from Earth's perspective are nearly conjunct. They are just about 13 arc minutes apart from each other at that moment in time. So we have a window where they are very close together. We're already in that window, but like the most precise near conjunction, I think it's July 12th to the 14th or so. Should be right around then. And you also see the moon right there. It's also sliding into that configuration as well at that moment in time. So our little friend, our antenna there, which has served us so well, also entering into alignment right then. So we just in general are going to be pulling more energy in from Saturn and Neptune. They've been hit with a bunch of coronal mass ejections over the past 30 days, launched from that western limb of the sun. And this being a near conjunction before they finally go conjunct in February 2026, I expect them to exert their archetypal influence on the world in some way in July and probably coming up soon. So that is a very, very, very big energy influence that has been building and will have a mini climax probably this month. And then the final show, the final climax, the big bang event is likely to occur beginning of 2026, January, February, or March. That's what I would say. And that's it for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. Again, I've been your host, Stefan Burns. This is what we cover on the channel. We look at what's happening energetically on the Earth by examining significant geologic events and geophysical energies like the Schumann resonances and more. We examine solar activity, space weather, planetary resonances, cosmic forces. I bring all that together, mix it up nicely, present videos nearly daily. So if you like the sound of that, then please subscribe, smash that like button, help this channel grow. We are about 345,000 strong right now, which is insane. So the community keeps getting bigger and bigger, and all are welcome. So thank you all so much for watching. Wishing all of you well. Please take care of yourselves, and I'll see you all in the next video.